Welcome to the Truth in Crime Case Files. Zara Hadley stood by the large bay window in her cozy suburban home, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. The soft, golden light of the late afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting a comforting glow on the living room. To anyone looking in, Zara's life seemed perfect. The Hadley home was one of elegance and comfort, filled with the warmth of family love. But beneath the calm exterior of their beautiful home, cracks had begun to form in Zara's marriage, cracks she was trying desperately to ignore. Zara was in her mid-30s, a woman of kindness and grace. Her heart had always belonged to her family. From the moment she met Callum Hadley, she believed she had found her soulmate. He was charming, successful, and had a way of making her feel like the most important person in the world. Their love story had been one of passion and excitement, and for a long time, Zara had felt she was living a fairy tale. Callum Hadley was 10 years older than Zara, and in many ways that made her feel secure. He had always been the strong, protective figure in her life, guiding her through the ups and downs of their marriage. He ran his own business, or at least that's what he told her. For years, Zara had never questioned the details of his work. He was often away on business trips, dealing with clients and meetings that were always high stakes and confidential. But lately, those absences had grown longer and the excuses more vague. Zara found herself wondering if Callum's world was more complicated than she had ever imagined. "Mommy, look what I drew." Zara turned from the window, smiling as her 8-year-old daughter, Eva, bounded into the room, her small hands clutching a piece of paper covered in colorful crayon strokes. Eva was the light of Zara's life, her innocence and joy a constant reminder of the love that had once filled the Hadley household. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Zara said, kneeling down to take the drawing from Eva. It was a picture of the three of them, Zara, Callum, and Eva, standing in front of their house, the sun shining brightly above. Zara's heart ached at the sight of it. To Eva, everything was still perfect. The picture was a child's view of their family, untouched by the doubts and fears that had begun to plague Zara's mind. "When will Daddy be home?" Eva asked, her bright blue eyes filled with the innocent hope that Zara wished she still shared. "He's on a business trip, love." "He'll be home soon," Zara replied, though she didn't know if it was true. Lately, Callum's business trips had become more frequent, and the man who returned from them felt more distant than ever before. Zara put on a brave face for her daughter, but inside she was drowning in uncertainty. Something was wrong. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the man she had married was changing. The long nights alone had given her too much time to think, too much time to wonder. The small signs were there, the late-night phone calls, the sudden changes in their bank account, the way Callum would stiffen when she asked about his work. She had begun to feel like an outsider in her own marriage. As she tucked Eva into bed that night, Zara felt the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her. She kissed her daughter goodnight and watched as Eva drifted off to sleep, her little face peaceful and unaware of the storm that was brewing just below the surface of their happy family life. Later, as Zara lay in bed, alone, her thoughts turned to Callum. She had always trusted him implicitly, but trust was no longer enough. There were too many unanswered questions. Too many moments where he had brushed off her concerns with a reassuring smile that now seemed more like a mask. Zara wanted to believe that everything was fine, that her husband was the man she had always thought him to be. But the seeds of doubt had already taken root, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Callum had promised her the world when they married. He had told her she would never have to worry, that he would take care of everything, and for years he had. Zara had been able to focus on raising their daughter, on building a life she could be proud of. But now, the foundation of that life felt shaky, as if it were built on secrets she wasn't meant to uncover. Zara closed her eyes, trying to silence the thoughts racing through her mind. She wanted to hold on to the image of the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had been her rock for so many years. But the truth was she didn't know Callum anymore, and that scared her more than anything. The next morning, Zara woke to find a note on the kitchen counter. It was from Callum, telling her he had to leave early for a meeting. She hadn't even heard him come home. The emptiness of the house pressed in on her, and for the first time she felt truly alone. Zara stared at the note, the words blurring before her eyes. She was beginning to realize that her picture-perfect life was starting to crack, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could hold it all together. For Zara Hadley, the unraveling had begun. Zara Hadley sat at the kitchen table, absently stirring her coffee, staring at the note Callum had left behind. It was just a few lines scribbled in his hurried handwriting. "Early meeting, will be back late. Don't wait up." She couldn't remember the last time they had shared breakfast together. Lately, his absences were no longer isolated events, but an increasingly regular part of their lives. As the silence of the empty house settled around her, the weight of it became suffocating. Callum used to be her companion, her partner in everything. But now she couldn't remember the last real conversation they had shared. It wasn't just about his work anymore. There was something more, something darker lurking just beneath the surface. Zara had tried to push the unease away, to remind herself that Callum was a good husband, a good father. But as the weeks passed, her intuition gnawed at her, relentless in its insistence that something was wrong. She glanced at her phone, her mind torn between reaching out and simply ignoring her growing suspicions. There were countless explanations for Callum's behavior. Stress. Or maybe he was just overwhelmed with whatever business venture he had gotten himself into. But as much as she wanted to believe it was that simple, the truth was elusive, slipping through her fingers every time she tried to grasp it. A faint sound broke the stillness, and Zara looked up to see Eva padding into the kitchen in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Good morning, sweetheart," Zara said, her voice softening as she smiled at her daughter. "Where's Daddy?" Eva asked, her innocent question a sharp reminder of the growing gap in their lives. "He had to leave early for work again," Zara replied, her chest tightening as she tried to keep her tone light. "He'll be back later." Eva nodded, accepting the answer without question. Zara watched as her daughter climbed onto a chair, pulling a bowl of cereal toward her with the carefree ease of a child who still saw the world in simple, uncomplicated terms. Zara envied that simplicity. As Eva ate, Zara's thoughts returned to the questions she had been avoiding. Was she just being paranoid, imagining problems where there were none? Or was there something more sinister beneath Callum's facade? Zara's heart ached as she thought back to the early days of their marriage. Back then, Callum had been an open book. He had shared every detail of his work with her, never leaving her in the dark. Now he was a man of secrets, a man with walls she couldn't seem to break through. And then there was the money. Zara hadn't meant to snoop, but a few days ago she had logged into their joint account, something she rarely did. What she saw had sent a cold chill down her spine. Large sums of money had been moving in and out of the account, transactions she didn't recognize. Callum hadn't mentioned anything about it, and when she had casually asked him about their finances, he had brushed her off with a vague reassurance that everything was under control. But Zara wasn't so sure anymore. She knew Callum's business had been doing well for years, but these transactions didn't feel like the result of a successful, legitimate venture. They felt like something else, something far more dangerous. Zara's phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from her friend Isla. "Lunch today? I need a break from work." Zara hesitated for a moment before typing a quick reply. Maybe Isla could offer some perspective, or at the very least, distract her from the gnawing anxiety that had taken root inside her. By the time Zara arrived at the cafe later that day, she was still restless, her thoughts spinning in circles. Isla greeted her with a warm smile, her carefree energy a welcome reprieve from the weight that Zara carried. "Hey you," Isla said as they sat down, her eyes twinkling with a mischievous glint. "You look like you could use a break." Zara smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yeah, things have been a lot lately." Isla studied her for a moment, the playful teasing fading as she took in the strain in Zara's expression. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" Zara hesitated, the words heavy on her tongue. She had kept her worries about Callum to herself for so long that speaking them out loud felt like crossing a line she wasn't sure she was ready to cross. But as she looked into Isla's concerned eyes, the dam finally broke. "I don't know," Zara began, her voice faltering. "Something's off with Callum. He's been distant, secretive, and there are these strange bank transactions. I don't know what to think." Isla's brow furrowed. "That doesn't sound good, Zara. Have you confronted him about it?" "I've tried," Zara said, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "But he just keeps brushing me off like I'm imagining things." Isla leaned in, her voice gentle but firm. "You're not imagining things. If your gut is telling you something's wrong, you need to trust that." Zara swallowed hard, her throat tightening as Isla's words hit home. She had always trusted her intuition, but with Callum she had been fighting it, afraid of what the truth might be. What if I find out something I don't want to know?" Zara whispered, her fear finally surfacing. Isla reached across the table and squeezed Zara's hand. "Whatever it is, you deserve to know. You can't live in this limbo forever, Zara." Zara nodded, the weight of Isla's words sinking in. She couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The cracks in her marriage were widening, and sooner or later, the truth would come crashing through. Zara couldn't shake the feeling that her world was slowly crumbling beneath her feet. Days passed since her conversation with Isla, but the unease that clung to her refused to let go. Every moment she spent with Callum felt like a careful dance around a dangerous truth. She found herself studying him more closely, searching his face for answers to questions she was too afraid to ask. It was late one evening when the first real crack appeared. Callum had come home even later than usual, the scent of expensive cologne lingering on him, a smell she didn't recognize. He was distant, barely acknowledging her as he slumped onto the couch, his eyes heavy with exhaustion or perhaps something else. Zara sat beside him, her nerves fraying with each passing second of silence. She wanted to reach out to ask him where he'd been, what was going on. But the words caught in her throat, stuck behind the fear that once they were spoken, there would be no going back. "How was your day?" she asked instead, her voice softer than she intended. Callum rubbed his temples, barely glancing her way. "Busy. A lot going on at work." His answer was curt, rehearsed like so many times before. Zara swallowed the lump in her throat. This was her husband, her partner of 10 years, and yet he felt like a stranger. The distance between them had grown insurmountable, a vast chasm filled with secrets. "I've noticed you've been working a lot more lately," she ventured, trying to keep her voice steady. "Is something going on at the company?" Callum tensed, his hand freezing mid-rub before he let it drop to his lap. "Nothing you need to worry about, Zara." That response, the same one he'd given her every time she asked about his business or the mysterious money transfers. The frustration that had been simmering inside her for weeks boiled over, and she couldn't hold back any longer. "I am worried, Callum," Zara said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You're never here anymore. You barely talk to me. I don't even know what's going on with you or this business of yours. I don't feel like I know you anymore." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. For a moment she thought Callum might break, might finally tell her the truth. But instead, his eyes hardened and a wall went up between them. "You're overreacting, Zara," he said, his voice cold. "I told you everything is fine. You need to stop digging into things that don't concern you." Her heart sank at his response. She had expected denial, maybe even anger, but the icy dismissal stung in a way she hadn't anticipated. Zara looked at him, her eyes searching for the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago, but all she saw now was someone hiding in plain sight. "I'm your wife, Callum," she whispered, her voice laced with pain. "Everything that concerns you concerns me. You can't shut me out like this." Callum stood abruptly, his movements stiff and controlled, as if he was fighting to keep something inside from spilling out. "I'm tired. I'm going to bed." Without another word, he left the room, leaving Zara sitting alone in the dark, her mind swirling with doubt and fear. The silence in their home was deafening, but it was the silence between them that hurt the most. The following night, Zara's suspicions reached a boiling point. Unable to sleep, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as Callum's slow, steady breathing filled the room. There was no peace in the rhythm, just a reminder of the secrets he was hiding from her. Quietly, Zara slipped out of bed and padded toward his office, the cold hardwood floor sending a shiver through her body. She knew she shouldn't be doing this, that there was a part of her that was afraid of what she might find. But her need for answers outweighed the fear. The office door creaked as she pushed it open, and Zara's heart pounded in her chest. She stood in the dim light for a moment, taking in the room. Papers were scattered across the desk, a laptop left open but locked. A pang of guilt tugged at her as she crossed the room to his desk, but she pushed it aside, her fingers trembling as she rifled through the papers. Most of it was normal, business documents, invoices, nothing unusual. But then, tucked beneath a folder, she found something that made her stomach drop. A phone. Not Callum's usual phone, but a second one she had never seen before. Her hands shook as she unlocked it. Callum had never been one for complicated passwords, and the familiar combination easily gave her access. What she saw next confirmed her worst fears. Text messages. Hundreds of them. Conversations with numbers she didn't recognize, discussing things she couldn't fully understand, but the tone was unmistakable. These weren't normal business exchanges, they were deals, arrangements. Something dark, something illegal. Zara's breath hitched as the realization hit her like a wave. Callum wasn't just hiding something from her. He was involved in something dangerous, something criminal. The weight of it all settled heavily on her chest, and she clutched the phone tightly in her hands. This wasn't just about their marriage anymore. This was about their lives. Zara sat in the dim light of the office, her breath shallow, the cold glow of the phone screen casting an eerie shadow across her face. Her mind raced, thoughts tumbling one after another in a storm of disbelief and horror. The messages on the hidden phone were unlike anything she had ever imagined. It wasn't just business deals. These were dangerous transactions. Discussions of money laundering, fraud, and even connections to violent crime. Her heart pounded as the reality settled in. Callum was a criminal. The man she had shared her life with, the man she had trusted with her heart, was entangled in something sinister. She felt sick, her stomach turning as the weight of this revelation pressed down on her. Every moment they had spent together, every smile, every embrace, now felt like a cruel lie. Zara wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but she was terrified of what that might lead to. What if Callum knew she had discovered his secret? What if he retaliated? The man she had once known was now a stranger, someone capable of deception on a level she couldn't comprehend. Trembling, she locked the phone and placed it back where she had found it. Her mind screamed at her to run, to escape from the web of lies she had stumbled into. But she couldn't, not yet. She needed more time, needed to figure out what to do next. For now, Zara knew she had to play along, to pretend everything was normal while she worked out her next steps. The next morning, Zara tried her best to suppress the turmoil swirling inside her. She moved through her daily routine with a forced calmness, watching Callum as he prepared for work. He was the picture of ease, humming quietly as he tied his tie, blissfully unaware of her inner struggle. But every time she looked at him, she saw the darkness lurking beneath the surface. "You okay?" Callum asked, his voice casual as he adjusted his cufflinks. "You seem a bit off." Zara forced a smile, her hands gripping the edge of the kitchen counter to steady herself. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just didn't sleep well." He nodded, his attention already drifting back to his own world. It struck her how easily he accepted her excuse, how little he truly noticed about her. For years, she had brushed off these small moments, chalking it up to the demands of his job. But now, everything seemed clear. Callum had always been hiding something, always keeping her at arm's length. As Callum left for work, Zara collapsed into a chair, her mind racing with the enormity of what she had uncovered. She couldn't keep living like this, trapped in a house of lies. But what could she do? Going to the police seemed impossible. What if they didn't believe her? What if Callum found out before she had a chance to act? The ringing of her phone snapped her from her thoughts. It was Isla. Her voice was bright as ever, oblivious to the storm brewing in Zara's world. "Hey, just wanted to check in on you. You seemed a bit down last time we spoke," Isla said, her concern genuine. Zara hesitated, the words caught in her throat. She wanted to tell Isla everything, to spill the truth and share the burden that was crushing her. But the fear of what could happen, of how dangerous Callum might truly be, held her back. "I'm okay," Zara lied, her voice tight. "Just dealing with some stuff." Isla paused, sensing something was off. "You sure? I'm here if you need to talk." "I appreciate it," Zara whispered, her heart aching with the weight of her secret. "Maybe we can grab coffee soon." "Of course, anytime," Isla said softly. "You know where to find me." As Zara hung up, she realized she couldn't wait any longer. She needed answers, but she couldn't do this alone. She needed help, someone who could untangle the mess she had found herself in. Her mind drifted to the detective Isla had mentioned, Detective Nia Harper. Zara knew that reaching out to Nia would change everything. It would set in motion a chain of events that she couldn't control, but she couldn't keep living with this fear. With a deep breath, Zara made her decision. She would find Nia. She would get the truth. But what terrified her most wasn't what Nia might uncover. It was the possibility that Callum already knew she was getting closer to his secrets. Zara sat at her kitchen table, the morning sun casting long shadows across the room. Her hands trembled as she sipped her tea, her mind consumed by the decision she knew she had to make. Detective Nia Harper, the name Isla had mentioned, lingered in her thoughts like a lifeline. Zara didn't know much about her, but she was out of options. She needed someone who could help her make sense of the darkness that had consumed her life. The fear that had once paralyzed her was now evolving into determination. She couldn't stay silent any longer. Callum's double life, the crimes he was involved in, it was all too dangerous to ignore. Every moment she stayed quiet, she was at risk. But more than that, she felt the crushing weight of betrayal, knowing the man she loved was hiding a monstrous truth. Zara had spent the night lying awake, replaying every moment with Callum in her mind, trying to understand where things had gone wrong. Had there been signs all along? She thought of his late nights, the vague answers about work, the sudden influx of money. How had she been so blind? But now wasn't the time for guilt. Now was the time for action. Zara reached for her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed Isla's number. She couldn't do this alone. She needed a way to contact Nia, someone who could help her take the first step into the unknown. "Hey Zara," Isla answered, her voice warm. "What's going on?" Zara hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. But she couldn't hold it back anymore. Isla? I need to talk to Detective Harper. It's about Callum. There's something going on, and I need her help. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, the silence between them heavy with meaning. Isla's tone softened, concern laced through her words. Zara, are you sure? This sounds serious. I'm sure, Zara whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know what to do anymore. I think he's involved in something dangerous, Isla. I can't ignore it. Isla didn't hesitate. Okay, I'll get you in touch with her. Nia's good at what she does. She'll help you. Zara exhaled, a wave of relief washing over her, though the fears still clung to her like a second skin. She thanked Isla and hung up, her heart still pounding in her chest. This was it, the first step toward uncovering the full truth. She didn't know what Detective Harper would find, or how deep Callum's secrets ran. But for the first time in weeks, Zara felt a flicker of hope, fragile yet real. As she sat in the quiet kitchen, the enormity of what she had set in motion dawned on her. There was no turning back now. Detective Nia Harper arrived at Zara's doorstep the following morning, her expression calm but sharp, eyes that seemed to see straight through any facade. Zara felt a mix of anxiety and relief as she invited the detective inside, her hands fidgeting as she led Nia to the living room. This was the moment she had dreaded and anticipated in equal measure. Nia sat down, her presence steadying. I've spoken to Isla, she began, her voice low and controlled. She told me you've discovered something about your husband. I'm here to help, but I need to know everything. Zara hesitated, her heart racing. It felt surreal to be on the verge of exposing Callum, the man who had been her partner, her love. But the images of the texts, the transactions, the cryptic conversations replayed in her mind. She couldn't live with this weight any longer. Taking a deep breath, Zara began. I found a phone hidden in his office. There are messages, criminal deals, people he's connected to, dangerous people. It's not just money. It's bigger than that. I don't know everything, but I'm scared, detective. I don't know who he really is anymore. Nia listened intently, never interrupting. Her eyes flickered with concern but also understanding. This isn't uncommon, she said softly, her voice tinged with empathy. People living double lives, hiding their true selves. It's going to be difficult, but you've done the right thing by coming forward. Zara's chest tightened, her emotions swirling between guilt and a strange sense of relief. She had crossed a line, there was no going back. But at least now she wasn't alone. Nia was here, and that brought a glimmer of hope. We'll start an investigation, Nia continued, her tone shifting to something more professional, precise. I'll need access to that phone. And Zara, from now on, you need to be careful. Don't confront him. Don't let him know you've discovered anything. Zara nodded, her throat dry. She could feel the danger lurking just beneath the surface. But now, with Nia's support, she felt a sense of direction, a path forward. As the detective left, Zara watched her go, her mind heavy with what was to come. Callum's lies had set everything in motion, but now the truth was clawing its way to the surface. The following days were a blur of tension and dread for Zara. Every moment spent in Callum's presence felt suffocating, his once comforting gaze now unsettling. She tried to act normal, to follow Detective Nia's instructions, but the fear gnawed at her. Callum's secret criminal life was darker than she ever could have imagined. Late one evening, after another terse dinner, Zara sat alone in her bedroom, her mind spinning with everything she had learned. Nia's call earlier had confirmed the worst. Callum was tied to far more dangerous people than she had realized. Fraud and embezzlement were just the surface. He was entangled in a web of illegal deals and violent individuals. She had wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but Nia had been firm. Stay quiet, stay safe, and let the investigation unfold. But something about Callum had changed in the last few days. His eyes lingered on her more than usual, his touch felt too controlling, too cold. Zara couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something, that the walls were closing in on both of them. That night, after Callum went to bed, Zara found herself unable to sleep. Anxiety wrapped around her like a vice, her heart racing as the house settled into silence. She decided to go downstairs, hoping a glass of water might calm her nerves. As she quietly descended the stairs, she heard voices. Callum was on the phone. She crept closer, heart pounding as she listened. She knows too much. I'm handling it tonight. Zara froze. The words sent a chill down her spine. Callum's calm, calculating tone left no room for doubt. He was talking about her. Panicking, Zara quickly backed away, her mind racing. She needed to get out. Now, she rushed to grab her keys, her movements frantic. But before she could make it to the door, Callum was there, blocking her path, his face shadowed in the dim light. Going somewhere? His voice was low, dripping with menace. Zara's heart stopped. She tried to play it off, but the look in his eyes told her it was too late. He knew. He had always known. Without warning, Callum lunged, his hands wrapping around Zara's throat. She gasped, her vision blurring as she struggled against him, but he was too strong. Her mind screamed for survival, but her body was weakening, her breaths coming in desperate, ragged gasps. Everything went dark. The next morning, Detective Nia Harper received an urgent call. Zara was dead, found lifeless in her home, her death staged to look like an accident. But Nia knew better. She had been too late. Callum had silenced the one person who had uncovered his secret. Detective Nia Harper stood outside Callum's home, her face grim. After Zara's murder, the investigation had escalated. Nia had meticulously gathered the evidence: phone records, financial transactions, and witness statements. Callum had tried to cover his tracks, staging Zara's death as an accident, but his mistakes were undeniable. With the arrest warrant in hand, Nia and her team moved swiftly. Callum was found at a friend's hideout, his usual calm shattered as he realized the net had closed in on him. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, his cold demeanor cracked, fear flickering in his eyes. "You'll never prove it," he spat, but Nia remained stoic. She knew justice for Zara was already in motion. Callum's double life was over, and now he would face the consequences of his deadly actions. Finally, justice had begun its course.